Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to dive back on into Action Comics with Action Comics issue 1059 by Philip Kennedy Johnson, Jean Louing Yang, Dan Parent, Eddie Barrows, Vic Bogdanovic, and Marguerite Sauvage. The Blue Earth threat escalates this issue as the organization sends out its own superpowered people to protect quote-unquote Metropolis. And now the depowered but armored Superman responds to their threats in kind, utilizing the skills he learned in Warworld's fighting pits to combat the beings alongside the Superman family. Johnson never forgets to impart Superman's morals in an issue, and he does so here, where Clark de-escalates the situation with his words, although he makes it known he's not afraid to lay down a beating on these powered people, reminding them of whose city this really is. Stopping the Blue Earth proves harder than the heroes thought, as they are busy manipulating the media to make the Superman family look like the big problem of the town, stirring up xenophobic rhetoric to push the family out and assume their position, with Lois even going so far as to assume that Blue Earth also wants to take over the Justice League's roles as well. On top of that, Nora Stone comes to see Othel, trying to convince the girl to join Blue Earth and live up to the potential Superman stole from her on Warworld. Johnson uses Othel's part in the story to begin asking questions on who Nora Stone really is, and we get to learn a little bit more about her this issue as we see her using her magic or her powers to invade Othel's mind and try and manipulate her, and even gives her a special amulet that can communicate with her. This of course leads to the question of who she is, and Superman begins feeling that he knows the woman from somewhere, coming to the realization that she is Jal Al Ghul, the daughter of Bruce Wayne and Talia Al Ghul from the Dark Universe, specifically a world they traveled to way back in Superman and the Authority special, just before the Warworld saga kicked off. This has been one hell of a long gestating plot point, and one I had remembered in the back of my mind, but one I just assumed Johnson maybe decided to jettison in order to streamline the story a little bit more. And really, let's be honest, if you hadn't read all of the Warworld saga, including the Superman and the Authority stuff, and hadn't read it a couple of times since it came out, you wouldn't even know this was a thing. And I'm really surprised they brought something from this far back. This is going back to early 2019, 2020, very early on. So for people who don't know who this character is, I'm sure they're going to get a rundown on who she is in the next couple of issues, and Superman does kind of a good job of explaining who she is in this issue. With her also comes the Empire of Shadows, her world's version of the League of Shadows, and they are gearing up to invade Earth Zero, which is the invasion that Nora Stone has been going on about for the last couple of issues, and one that she is trying to pin on the Superman family and aliens, but in reality, it's actually her people. This is most likely going to be the final part of the story that Johnson tells in Action Comics before passing it over to writers like Jason Aaron and Mark Waid to do their stuff early next year, and I'm really excited to see where he's going with this, since especially now that we've gotten pretty much all of the secrets out in the open, all the reveals have really been done. We know who the villain is, we know where they've come from, we know what they want to take over Earth Zero. I'm intrigued to see what more we're going to learn about the Super Twins though, since of course last issue he did that big story with Kara revealing the Red Sun and the Star Child, and that stuff felt like a Chekhov's gun of sorts, where you don't set that sort of stuff up without revealing that these two characters are going to be the physical embodiments of those great warriors. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how he handles it in these last couple of issues. On top of Johnson's stellar writing, Eddie Barrows also tags in as the main artist for the book with some really neat and fittingly dark artwork. He used some really great visuals to depict Janelle's power and how they worked, making them sort of like a storm or a sandstorm that the characters get caught up in and see images of each other in the sandstorm. It's quite trippy. On top of that, we also get Superman in a set of armor, and it's just an instant classic look for him. He's literally a knight in shining armor now, and it has really cool little details, like the little shield he uses through the first part of the issue is the S shield he wore on Warworld. And again, just bringing things back that Johnson wrote into the story, probably thinking that it was just going to be like a cool little reference, but now it's actually being used, 10 issues on, and just stuff like that is really neat, especially visual callbacks like that. On top of Johnson's story, we got 2 more backups this issue. The first finishing up Kenan Kong's story and how he joined the Superman family, and it's a little bit sad. Kenan of course died last issue, but thanks to his key powers and his ties to Superman, who has also come back from the dead a number of times, he is able to come back from the dead himself and still know who Superman really is. He and Superboy sort out their misunderstandings about why he was spying on the family and why he thought maybe the family were killing people off who found Superman's identity, but the Batman of China arrives to kill the Superman family, thinking that they murdered Kenan when he got too close to their secret. Kenan is left in a real tough spot when Batman cannot learn Clark's identity, otherwise he too will die, and to save his friend, he turns his back on him and sides with the Superman family, putting himself between them and Batman, knowing that his friend won't hurt him no matter what. This leaves Kenan's story in a rather bittersweet place, as while he has found a family in the Superman family, he had to turn his back on one of his best friends in the world, and despite the heroic intentions behind it, it's still really sad. I applaud Jean Louis-Yang for not shying away from that or having some sort of Deus Ex Machina come in to sort it out so that Baxi can learn who Clark Kent is. Since this is the end of the backup as well, I hope we do get more Kenan-centric content in the coming issues or in some other form, in some other book, since his entire lore and history and that side of the superhero world he inhabits is just so interesting. And it's just so different compared to the other Superman family characters and opens a wealth of opportunities for other heroes like the Batman of China or more appearances from Avery Ho and characters like that. The last backup of the book by Dan Parent centers on John Kent, forgoing a lot of the superheroics of the first 2 stories for a more slice of life type story, with John being tasked with babysitting Osel and Othel, while Clark is busy Supermaning and Lois is busy running the Daily Planet. This is actually quite an interesting take on their relationship because of course we had the stuff Johnson set up with John feeling a little bit jealous of the Super Twins, but then of course overcoming it and accepting them for who they are and accepting them into their family. And I like that this is him being their big brother and helping out his family with these kids who need a little bit of help and need a little bit of love after everything they've experienced on Warworld. Finding some very rare spare time to himself, John tries to set up a date with Jay, but between his babysitting and Jay running Steelworks PR, they don't really have enough time, being, of course, they're working adults. Both decide to take a mental health day though and spend it together doing all the things they love, which is mostly eating tacos and churros, which I can definitely get behind. This little backup is also set between some issues of Steelworks, so the Superman Day celebrations are in full swing, and of course we see in the Steelworks books they get attacked, so Superman has to go off to save the day while Jay has to go and run PR for Steelworks, and of course it leaves them with no time to each other again, and the story ends with them trying to find more time for it, then just collapsing in exhaustion because they've just been running around all day doing Superman and superheroic things. Given how much action is in the first 2 stories, I quite like the ending of the book being just a simple, relaxed story about 2 adults trying to make time for one another, something which is incredibly relatable. Marguerite Sauvage draws the backup and brings her signature light, dreamy style to the book, very fitting for a very laid-back story about 2 characters trying to go on a date. Savage has actually drawn John and his Superman supporting cast quite a number of times now through backups and through other books like the Power Girl book, and now I think she is a great fit for this Superman, and it gives him a unique style separated from the rest of his family, and a style that feels very young and modern and fresh, which is what his Superman is, and I think it's very fitting, and hopefully she gets to draw a lot more of him in the coming years. Action Comics delivered lots of fantastic action, story beats, and big reveals this week, taking the Blue Earth storyline into some really exciting territory that builds off of what Johnson and Grant Morrison's past works in the Warworld saga did, while both backups also presented neat little stories that expand on Kenan Kong and John Kent's storylines really well. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10.